about, you form an opinion on, when you're really just talking out of your ass. And that's where most people are when it comes to conspiracy theories. You know,
with everything.
With everything. People talk out of their ass. And because people have a huge vested interest in being correct about things. You know, people hate being foolish. They hate being the dumb one. They hate being uninformed. You know? People love correcting people. They love, like, your is you apostrophe R-E, as in you are.
That.
You know, okay, you're a fucking awesome dude because you spotted that guy. Meanwhile, I do that all the time.
That's kind of
being an asshole.
That's kind of why I like the iPhone, how it always fucks up my texting and stuff like
You can
that.
blame it.
Because then people are starting to slowly less do it to me now because everyone's doing it.
Right. Conspiracy theory with Jesse Ventura. I haven't seen it. Brian didn't like it?
It was alright. I don't know.
Jesse Ventura is one of those dudes that thinks because he's a Navy SEAL or he's a former Navy SEAL that he has inside information. I'm a former Navy SEAL.
That Opie and Anthony thing just really got to me on both sides. You know?
Yeah, you were upset at Jim Norton. Who do you think?
Well, I was on both sides. That got me upset. I thought they both handled it.
It's hard having a fucking intelligent conversation at 7 o'clock in the morning. God damn it! You know, whenever I do those morning radio shows, I'm always like, what am I even talking about? Like, I'm always half out of it, mumbling and shit. It's hard to wake the fuck up. It's like you have to drink coffee if you're gonna do one of those morning radio shows. You really can't go in sober. You gotta have a little bit of that and a cup of coffee. Bang. Mothra or Rodan? I was more of a Rodan fan. I thought Mothra was kind of a faggy monster.
Yeah, me too.
Big stupid moth. That's a dumbass.
Who cares
monster.
about moths?
Yeah, I mean, why not have a giant roach? People hate roaches. Roaches are scary as fuck. Why do you want to have a big stupid moth?
You don't.
The Japanese had a bunch of crazy ass monsters.
They still do. They still do those gods. You know they still do.
Turtle. Remember that turtle?
Godzilla.
Is that Rodan? Rodan the turtle? Yeah.
Yeah.
Rodan's the turtle. Well, come on, man. A fucking turtle?
Yeah.
You
know they still do the Godzilla movies with the people in the costumes?
They still make those?
I heard they still make them in Japan.
We have no confirmation. See, this is another thing.
That's what I
We're
heard.
talking out of our ass. We don't really have. We've done no research.
Right.
You know.
Sick. Isn't that what that means? What does sick
What
mean?
happens to the Iceman now? You know, I don't know, man. I don't know. If I type on this, is this going to go to my Twitter?
It's going to twit.
Okay, so how do I tell people to follow us on this thing?
You can add new you can add new chat boxes. Oh, you mean on Twitter?
Yeah, I'm going to post this on Twitter to get people to follow us.
When you post on here, it automatically makes the link.
It does?
Yeah, see?
Oh, okay.
See how everyone has this link, your link underneath it?
Oh, I see.
Is that cool?
Okay. What is this HeyJoeRogan.net? What is that?
That's just what is on. You don't have to put HeyJoeRogan.net.
Okay.
You can erase all that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's for other people, so they don't get nervous. When you put sick in like commas or in, does that mean kind of or like approximately?
Excuse me?
When people write sick, S-I-C.
Oh, spelling incorrect.
Oh.
It's when someone uses poor grammar or poor spelling.
All this time I thought it meant something else.
How high am I right now? 1 to 10? 4? Probably like a 4.
Yeah, I'm not that high at all.
Not very high. There's 230 of you motherfuckers in here right now. We're rolling strong, bitches. 230. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to all of you. All right. What else? I'm a fan of Jeet Kune Do. I'm a fan of Bruce Lee. I'm a fan of his idea to add all the I mean, he was really the original mixed martial artist. When I started out as a kid, I did karate, and then I started doing taekwondo. And each one of those disciplines, karate and taekwondo, wanted you to think that their style was the best style, the end-all, be-all style. Karate, they didn't want you training with taekwondo people. Taekwondo people, they didn't want you training with karate people. You know, judo people didn't want you training with kung fu people. It was like everybody was like really attached to their style. So really, Bruce Lee and Jeet Kune Do, that's the original mixed martial art. That's the original guy to look at, you know, all the different systems and take what's useful from each one. I mean, Bruce Lee was a genius when it came to martial arts. Way ahead of his time.
I like this because the questions are slower and it twitters them.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. This is the first time I've done this. Like I said, I'm always threatening to do this, but we're doing it now, you motherfuckers. Subverter. Talk more about Hunter S. Thompson. I love that feeling where the truth just hits you. Hunter S. Thompson was a fucking genius. He was one of the very few dudes that really captured the angst of the 60s and the 70s, the Nixon era, and he was a part of the acid culture of the 60s. He was a part of the culture like the San Francisco Haight-Ashbury movement, where it's like everybody was doing acid. All these people were like, and good acid. So all these people were like really coming together, and they were really like releasing their egos and their identity and kind of like losing themselves in a movement, and in this hippie movement of the 60s, which seems like really stupid now. We look at it and it's like, God, look at these idiots with their long hair and their stupid clothes. But what they were doing was they were radically departing from the previous culture. I mean, the difference between the 50s and the 60s is fucking gigantic. The difference between like Buddy Holly and Jimi Hendrix is like, I mean, that's another world. I mean, that's not like a 10-year evolution. That's an evolution that would have taken hundreds, or not, maybe not even gotten there at all. It's almost like they needed the drugs. They needed acid and mushrooms and pot and peyote. They needed all that shit and heroin to launch themselves like from one frequency to the next one. And the 60s were a totally different frequency when it came to music, when it came to culture, and that set the stage for what happened in the 70s and the 80s, and where the really crappy music that came from the 80s and some of it in the 70s, but definitely the 80s. Like, what that is like this consciousness, this incredible music where these people were like really like tuning into the art of it in the 60s. Like, more 60s music is like classic fucking shit. That you hear today and you go, God damn, that's a good song. It's like they really figured out how to tap into the real shit. The real energy that makes art interesting, that makes art resonate. And I think they did it with drugs. And I think that the decline in the 70s and certainly in the 80s was because there was like a void left where like this tuning in, this connection to the real pure source was gone. It's like whatever they had hit, whatever frequency they had nailed in the 60s, the echoes of it had died down by the time the 80s hit. And I think Hunter S. Thompson had a fucking brilliant story that he wrote, a brilliant like piece that he wrote, the wave, the talking about how the 60s was like a wave, and that when the 60s ended, you could see where the wave broke back, like where they thought that people could be, like where they saw the true potential of humanity, of the United States, of the human race in general. And you saw it just roll back and go back to where it was. And that's what it was between the 60s and the 70s, and he nailed that shit better than anybody. Hunter S. Thompson's words today, still, when you look at, like, especially what was going on with the Bush administration and what was just, like, the clearest evidence ever of massive amounts of corruption in government, where, they got us into a war that made no fucking sense. And it was obvious, like, across the board. The internet was, up. The information was being, very easily transferred back and forth, and yet it still managed to go through. And the way he felt about the Nixon administration, you literally could substitute Nixon for Bush and then insert most of the shit that he said into, the early 2000s. Raw sound? Does it sound shitty? What do you think about doing a radio show of my own? I would love to do a radio show. The only problem is I don't think anybody wants to pay me to do a radio show. I might have to do a radio show like this because right now, Adam Carolla has a sweet setup where he does podcasts and he gets a lot of people to listen to it. And that might be the way to go because satellite radio is struggling financially, and, some people make money from it. Like, obviously Howard Stern makes a lot of money from it, and I think Opie and Anthony make good money from it, but they don't want to pay anybody else. They're not making money, so they don't have the money to give out. So I think if I'm going to do any sort of... let me turn that up. Does it work? Is that any better? Is that louder, anybody? If I'm going to do any sort of a podcast or something like that, it's going to be this. It's going to be like this. And I saw Soulja Boy do it, so I was like, yeah.
Dude, remember that video of Soulja Boy and the guy in the background with his gold necklace? Just going...
Yeah, man. Soulja Boy's fascinating to me. If you don't know Soulja Boy, he's a rapper, a very young fellow who's wildly successful, made millions and millions of dollars, and he's